morning, everyone. Let me get rolling on here. This is Roger Collinson, Corporate Secretary, and as the operator said, welcome to the joint general session of the ISO Board of Governors and the Western Energy Imbalance Market Governing Body. We do have a joint session this morning, so in those instances, I'm going to guide us through the agenda and the process, and I will go ahead and take a joint roll call, which will be alphabetical of both bodies. So let me start. Chair Bogwat.
Present.
Governor Borenstein.
Present.
Chair Decker.
Present.
Member Fong.
Present.
Governor Galitova.
Present.
Member Gardner.
Present.
Vice Chair Konzioka.
Present.
Vice Chair Leslie. I understand that Mary is not able to get connectivity at this time, so at this point, mark her not present. Member Prescott.
Present.
And Governor Shorey.
Present.
Thank you, governors and members of the governing body. Let me, to start out, turn it over to Chair Decker for some opening comments.
Thank you, Roger. So we want to welcome those of you that are attending this meeting for your support and the interest in the two topics today, filling the positions on the Governance Review Committee and consideration of the first phase of the transmission service and market scheduling. Your engagement has been crucial to both processes, and we look forward to your continued input into the transmission scheduling initiative as it moves forward. So with that, I would turn it to Chair Bogwat.
Thank you, Rita. I also want to welcome everyone to what is going to become a fairly common event, joint sessions of the two boards, and looking forward to it. And I, again, want to reiterate some of these issues that are coming to us went through a very quick process, and we very much appreciate everyone's active participation. And Roger, I will turn it back to you.
Okay, great. Thank you, Chair Bogwat. Thank you, Chair Decker. The first item on our agenda is for public comment, and as most of you probably know, that this item is for any public comment that is for items not on the agenda, so general public comment. Operator, can you open it up for general public comment from the audience, please?
Sure. To make a comment, please raise hand on your Zoom icon at the bottom, or press #2 if you're dialed in via the audio. At this time, we have no one in the queue.
Thank you, operator. Agenda item number 2 is for a decision on the EIM Governance Review Committee membership. And to introduce this topic is Stacy Crowley, our Vice President of External Affairs. Stacy.
Good morning, governors and EIM governing body members and members of the public. Thank you for your time today. I would like to introduce the first item, which is the decision on the Governance Review Committee membership. Having completed the work that resulted in the governance refinements adopted last year, the Governance Review Committee is now ready to consider the potential governance enhancements for the extended day-ahead market, or EDM. The GRC has had 14 members, which included 11 members from various stakeholder sectors, as well as 1 representative from the body of state regulators, 1 non-voting representative each from the Board of Governors and the EIM governing body. And although most of the original committee members remain available for this next effort, 3 members have recently stepped down. And as a reminder, those 3 members are Jennifer Gardner, who represented the public interest and consumer advocates stakeholder sector. She's now a member of your EIM governing body. Doug Howe, he was the director of Western Grid Group, also representing the public interest and consumer advocate sector. And Mary Winke, the vice president of transmission and regulation and market at Pacific Corp. So with those members departing and following your discussions at the last joint meeting on December 16th, and at your request, we solicited potential candidates to fill those seats. The California ISO issued 2 market notices and conducted additional outreach to ask for interested candidates in the public interest and consumer advocate sector and the EIM entity sector to be identified by January 12th. I want to thank all the stakeholders who engaged in that process to identify qualified candidates, and they certainly did bring us great candidates. So regarding the EIM entity sector seat, the sector itself identified Pam Swarberg as their consensus nominee to replace the seat vacated by Mary Winkie. Ms. Swarberg works for Portland General Electric and currently is the manager of market analytics and performance. Regarding the public interest and consumer advocate seats, with 2 open seats, the public interest and consumer advocate sector identified one candidate, Michelle Beck, who's the executive director of the Utah Office of Consumer Services, as their consensus nominee to represent the interests of consumer advocates on the GRC. The second seat had 4 very strong candidates, but the sector did not come to a consensus view and decided to have the members of their sector each confidentially identify to me their first choice preference among each of the 4 remaining candidates. I provided that rank list along with all of the materials for all candidates, which included resumes and letters of interest, to both the board and the governing body. On Tuesday, January 18th, you all held a joint executive session to discuss the candidates for each seat and the input received from the 2 sectors. Based on your discussions and the valuable input from the sectors and the goal of ensuring that the GRC includes a broad and diverse range of perspectives, you are considering appointing the 2 consensus selections, which is Pam Swarberg from the EIM entity sector and Michelle Beck representing consumer advocates, as well as Amanda Orman, who was one of the 4 additional candidates identified by the public interest and consumer advocate sector. Ms. Orman is located in Arizona and is the principal of Orman Group LLC, an energy consulting firm. I will now turn it back to Roger.
Thank you. And let me ask folks that aren't talking to please mute their phones. There's a little bit of feedback happening. At this point in the agenda, I would like to turn it to the governing body and to the board for any discussion that they have and would like any comments they would like to make on the GRC nominations. And I think maybe the most orderly way to do that is let me start with the chair of our governing body, Anita Decker. And Anita, do you have comments or questions?
Well, I have a couple of comments, but I'd like to turn it to other governing body members if they would like to make any comments at this time.
Excellent. Thank you.
This is John.
Hi, John. Go ahead, please.
Just real quick, I thank everybody for their work in putting this together. And right now I want to thank our own Jennifer Gardner, Doug Howe, and Mary Winkie for their service on the GRC. Did wonderful work, and they'll be missed in this particular committee.
And Val, I saw your hand raised.
Yeah, I just want to make a few quick comments. First, I want to say thank you to Pam, Michelle, and Amanda, who are the candidates that we are considering. I will vote in support of this slate for agreeing to take on this effort. And for the 3 of you, my own experience as a member of the GRC has taught me that it's both fun and a learning experience. You are each recommended by your sectors, and you will be a voice for your sectors during the GRC's deliberations. I do want to take this moment to remind you that while you are voices for your sectors, at the end of the day, we are charging you with coming up with a workable and durable governance model that is hopefully acceptable to all sectors. It will be hard work, but you will quickly come to appreciate all of your colleagues on the committee. And then I'd also like to note that to the others who might have also expressed an interest in joining the GRC, thank you for being willing to volunteer for this rather daunting task. You have our gratitude and respect. So thank you.
And Jennifer or Rob, any comments? So I just want to say that I, too, am going to support this.
Anita, sorry to interrupt you, but Rob does have his hand raised.
Oh, I couldn't see him.
Sorry, Anita. I was using both the raise hand and I was raising my hand, and that must have been out of your screen. Yes, I'd like to endorse comments made by John and Val. I'd also like to add that, as previously stated, the expressions of interest for serving on the GRC are greatly appreciated, and I thought we had an excellent opportunity of going through just terrific backgrounds, and I think that all of the individuals who expressed interest could have done a great job in serving on the GRC. And I'm happy with the slate that we have, and I've worked with all three of these in the past, and I'm happy to endorse them, and I will be voting in favor of them serving on the GRC.
So last I missed, Jennifer, did you have any comments?
You know, I can just kind of pile on to what's already been said, Anita. You know, I noticed that especially from the public interest side of the combined public interest and consumer advocate sector, we saw a number of highly qualified candidates, and I think any one of those individuals would have been an excellent addition to the GRC. And so I want to thank everybody who sort of threw their hat in the ring and was ready to volunteer for this really important effort. And I also want to underscore something that Val said, which I think is really important. Even though each individual on the GRC technically represents one stakeholder sector, it's really important to keep in mind sort of the long view here, that the goal is to develop a governance proposal that is truly acceptable to all stakeholder sectors. And so you really have to, you know, think as a part of a group and really be willing to work together to reach compromise when it's feasible. And it was a wonderful experience for me, so I really appreciate everybody that has been nominated, and I really look forward to voting on this very highly qualified slate. Thank you, Anita.
I too support this slate of candidates, and I also want to say a shout out to Stacey Crowley, because she really did a lot of work in the background to work with the sectors and to bring these candidates forward. And in terms of the candidates, they are all very well qualified, and I think they're going to be a tremendous addition to the GRC work and working with Therese Hampton. The other comment I would make about the candidates that were also very well qualified that were not selected, I really hope to see them continue to engage, as they have been in many cases anyway. But if they haven't been as engaged, I hope that they will jump into the Regional Issues Forum and really make their presence known and continue to give their input and thoughts to the work that's going forward, whether it's the GRC or other initiatives that we have coming before the body. So thank you, everyone that expressed interest. Thank you, Stacey, for your work on this. And Roger, Chair Barlow, I'm turning it over to you.
Yeah, thank you, Chair Deckman. That's exactly what I was going to do. So, Chair Bagua, if you have comments or would like to solicit comments from the board, that would be great.
Yeah, I'll start off by inviting anyone on the board who wants to speak, and I believe Mary is on as well. So, if she would like to.
Yes, I've understood that she's on. She did tell me she thought she was in the listen only in the background. I was trying to see if we could work that out. Mary, are you able to hear us and actually be heard? Okay, well, let's hopefully we can.
Roger, oh. I can hear you.
Oh, excellent.
Thank you for unmuting me.
Okay, good.
Yeah.
Welcome, Mary, and we are all here. So anyone have any comments from the Board of Governors?
I just wanted to say, being a non-voting member on the GRC, that this indeed is an excellent slate. Thank you, Stacey Crowley, and everybody who did such hard work on an accelerated schedule to make sure that we have these excellent candidates. Doug Howe has moved on to Portugal, so he is enjoying life in Portugal, which is great for him. Mary Wenke is now in another position. Actually, she will still be involved both with the EIM, EDEM, and GRC, because she's taking over the position that Therese Hampton, the chair of the GRC, used to have. And, of course, Jennifer now has joined the family of the EIM governing body. So everybody is still very much involved in the issues, just in different capacities. And it seemed that losing the two members of the public interest consumer advocate group really was an impetus for us to seek new nominations and make sure that we had those members replaced, along, of course, with the EIM representative. So it's really great that we've got Pam and Michelle and Amanda, excellent candidates, stepping into a role that is, yes, very much a consensus-building role for a very important issue as we consider potential enhancements for EDAM and beyond. So very much looking forward to voting on this item as well, and very grateful that we have come to this very good solution.
Thank you, Angelina. Any other comments from board members?
I'll just jump in to thank Stacy for the great work and the GRC for the work they've done so far, and all of the members for continuing to provide such important input to the board and to the CAISO.
Thank you, Governor Borenstein.
Anyone else? That's great. I'm going to just very briefly not repeat all of those thanks, and also thank the sector members who, frankly, responded very quickly to the request that was barely a month old, and we very much appreciate that. This was a great process given how accelerated it was. And with that, Roger, I think public comment?
Yes, correct. Operator, if you could open the line up for public comment on the decision on the EIM Governance Review Committee membership.
To make a comment, please use the raise hand icon, or if you're dialed in, please press #2. At this time, we have no one in the queue.
Thank you, and thank you, governors, members of the governing body. So let me just explain, because the joint meeting is a little bit of a new process here, and you'll see a little bit different chart on the bottom of the motion that just popped up, is that the process we have developed is to frame a single motion. I'll seek a moving and a second party from the group of 10, so just one moving party, one second party, and then I will take the vote in alphabetical order of the joint session for both the governing body and the members, and I will tally the vote and give the results at that point. So with that, can I have a motion? Well, maybe I need to read it first. Move that the Board of Governors and the EIM governing body jointly appoint the following individuals to fill the current vacancies in the EIM Governance Review Committee: Michelle Beck, Amanda Orman, and Pam Spilberg. May I have a motion, please?
This is Val, so moved.
I'll
Thank you, Val.
Angelina.
Angelina is second. Thank you. And with that, let me take your votes. Governor Bagua.
Aye.
Governor Borenstein.
Aye.
Chair Decker.
Aye.
Member Fong.
Aye.
Governor Galitova.
Aye.
Member Gardner.
Aye.
Vice Chair Kanzioka.
Aye.
Vice Chair Leslie.
Aye.
And Member Prescott.
Aye.
And Governor Shorey.
Aye.
The tally is not very difficult today. The motion has been approved by the governing body and the board. Thank you, governors. Thank you, governing body members. And with that, let me turn it back to Stacy Crowley as she had a few closing comments that she wanted to make on this item.
Thank you, Roger, and thank you, governors and EIM governing body. Pleased with that result and looking forward to working with those new members. I just wanted to take a quick minute to note that, as I said, the 11 of the GRC members have agreed to stay on and are committed to the work regarding the evaluation of potential changes to governance with the development of EDAM. Importantly, Therese Hampton will remain on the committee and as chair. As many of you know, she has recently left the public generating pool, but is still very proudly representing the public power community in this capacity. The GRC had, as a body, selected her as the chair at the very start of their work, and they are thrilled that she is willing to stay on and continue in that role. Rebecca Wagner will continue as vice chair, and we are, again, so thankful for all the members of the committee for their continued work on this important effort. So just wanted to make that note and let folks know that the GRC now is a full complement and ready to get started.
Excellent. Thank you, Stacy. Our next agenda item is our decision on transmission service and market scheduling priority initiatives, phase 1. And before I turn this over to Anna McKenna to introduce the topic, let me just note that we do have two parts to this agenda item, is that ultimately after the management discussion and comment and all that, we will have the governing body exercise its advisory role in determining whether or not to advise approval of this item, which is ultimately a board-approved item. And so there will be two motions when we get to that point, and the advisory role of the governing body, and then I will do a separate motion for the board's vote. With that, let me turn it over to you, Anna. I think you may be on mute. Hello? Did I lose service, or is it just really silent?
No, it's silent.
Good morning.
Oh, okay. I started getting nervous. Is it me or you? Okay, Anna, over to you now.
Good morning, everybody. This is Anna McKenna. I hope everyone can hear me.
We can.
Okay, thank you. Good morning, Board of Governors, governing body members, colleagues, and members of the public. I am pleased this morning to present to you our proposal on the Transmission Service and Market Scheduling Priorities Initiative Phase 1. I'll shortly be turning this over to Greg Cook, Executive Director of Market and Infrastructure Policy, who will walk us all through the proposal. But before I do, I want to take this opportunity to thank stakeholders for their significant engagement in this item, and the continued hard work of the cross-sectional ISO staff for their continued dedication to creating a workable solution in this space for the ISO and our partners and the Western Interconnection overall. Today's proposal does not mark the end of this effort, but it provides a balanced solution for the next 2 summers as we all seek to serve load reliably across the Western Interconnection. And with that, I will ask that Greg walk us through the proposal.
Good morning, everybody. Can somebody confirm they can hear me?
Yes, we can hear you.
Yeah. Okay, great. This is presenting today our decision on transmission service and market scheduling priorities. This is phase 1 of the initiative, and this is our proposal for addressing the current rules for wheel-through transactions that will be expiring in June of this year. And we're also proposing an enhancement to our rules for high-priority exports. Next slide, please. So when we look at the EIM governing body role under the new joint authority rules, this phase 1 of this initiative falls within the EIM governing body's advisory role. This proposal modifies the rules for the extent that schedules for wheel-through transactions and exports from the ISO balancing authority area would receive priority. So, when we looked at this proposal, the proposal does not impact EIM entities in their capacity as participants in the EIM. It's only applicable to the California ISO balancing authority area. So, therefore, these proposals fall outside of the joint authority. However, they do fall under advisory authority as the proposals do change the real-time market rules. Next slide, please. So what we're proposing here is to extend the interim wheeling through scheduling priorities that are currently in place for another 2 years until June 1st of 2024. Now, these rules were first approved last April and have been in place since then. We think that by extending these rules for another 2 years, it provides a number of benefits. First, it provides certainty to our market participants on the rules for wheeling through the ISO. This will help support contracting efforts for this coming summer as well as the next summer. We also believe that this will retain the balance protections for native load and priority wheel-throughs that were established through this interim proposal. And if you recall the proposal that was approved last year, this interim approach includes requirements for establishing wheeling priority limits, which then limits the amount of high-priority wheel-through transactions. So we have a couple of requirements here. First, for those wheel-through transactions, they must notify the ISO 45 days prior to the month and quantity of the wheel, and they also must attest that they have secured a firm power supply contract and firm transmission to the ISO border. And so we believe that this helps to demonstrate that those external entities are depending on the ISO transmission system to serve their load, and maintains that opportunity for us to have this priority between those wheel-through transactions and ISO load. And finally, we think a big benefit of this approach is that it will really allow us time for not only ISO but also stakeholders to focus on a long-term durable solution to establish a transmission reservation process. And I think there's pretty strong agreement among the stakeholders that this is the preferred end state design that we should try and get to as soon as practical. Next slide, please. The proposal also includes a change on how variable energy resources can support high priority exports. Under the current rules in place, we do require resources that are shown as supporting a high priority export to ensure that they have sufficient capacity to support that export for the entire hour. When this requirement is met by a variable energy resource, it's based on the forecast at the time of the bid submission. We found that an issue can arise, though, because we do start accepting real-time energy market bids immediately after the close of the day-ahead market. So this can be somewhat problematic when the real-time bids are submitted right after the day-ahead market close, because that forecast may become somewhat stale by the time we get to the real-time market and overstate the available capacity that's actually there to support that high-priority export transaction. So what we're proposing to do here is to require that if the variable energy resource is being used to support those high-priority exports, that their output would be based on the most recent forecast at the time the real-time market bids are due, ahead of the real-time market close for the relevant hour. And this sets the expectation that if the forecast changes, a scheduling coordinator for that high-priority export should update their bids accordingly. Next slide, please. We're also planning to implement some data availability and system enhancements as part of this initiative in response to stakeholder requests. First, we're looking to post additional data on the ISO website related to wheel-through and export transactions in order to help inform market participant decisions. This will provide additional information to help market participants assess the risk of potential intertie schedule curtailments. And then we're also proposing a set of system enhancements designed to help the coordination between supporting resources and scheduling coordinators that are submitting high-priority exports. There's two system enhancements we're proposing here. One is further visibility on resources non-RA capacity, and this will help facilitate the submission of more accurate high-priority export schedules. And we'll also provide notifications when those high-priority export schedules exceed that non-RA capacity of the supporting resource. Next slide, please. So I think we can say that stakeholders largely support, or at least do not oppose the proposal. There's a fair amount of support for the extension of the current market scheduling priorities, because I think there's a realization that this will provide time to develop and focus on that long-term framework. However, there is a recognition that this extension is a compromise. I don't think anybody's truly thrilled about it, but at the end of the day, I think they see this as the best approach to getting us to that long-term solution that everyone's looking to, and will allow us to focus on that. There is a lot of pressure. People want us to make sure we have confidence of sticking to the timeline. We have proposed to extend this for 2 years. We do believe that this is a realistic timeline. We would complete the policy development this year, and then that would allow us for implementation next year. This also has the benefit of providing certainty to the market that they will have the design completed fairly far in advance, so that will also support contracting activities going forward. And then, finally, I think there was also many stakeholders acknowledged and appreciated the data availability enhancements and agreed that those were responsive to the requests that came through the stakeholder process, and agreed that those will provide additional benefits in informing those intertie transactions under the current framework. Next slide, please. So with that, we're proposing that we're asking, I guess, two questions here. We're asking the EIM governing body to provide their support for this proposal, and then asking the board approve the proposal to extend the interim wheel through scheduling priorities framework through June 1st of 2024. We think there are several benefits to this proposal. As I stated, it provides certainty to the market that the current rules will be in place over the next 2 years. It also includes some enhancements for those provisions for variable energy exports that are used to support high priority export transactions. And, finally, this really allows us to continue to focus on that long-term durable framework for a transmission reservation process that we'll be continuing to work on this year, and hopefully completing the policy development this year, and again, work on implementation the following year. And with that, I would be happy to answer any questions.
We will go to public comment after the next item. Let's have the Department of Market Monitoring, Ryan Krolinski. Are you there?
Yeah, hello. Good morning, Chair Bagwat, Chair Decker, governors and governing body members. This is Ryan Krolinski from the Department of Market Monitoring. Thank you for the opportunity to go over DMM's views on the ISO's Transmission Service and Market Scheduling Priorities Phase 1 proposal. DMM supports the ISO's Phase 1 proposal to extend the interim summer 2021 wheeling policy for 2 more years. We also support the change to how variable energy resources can support high priority exports, as well as the technological enhancements to increase transparency into the non-resource adequacy capacity that may be available to support high priority exports. I'll briefly go over our high-level views on these proposals. First, the ISO proposes to extend the interim wheeling priorities that it implemented in the summer of 2021. So DMM's criteria for evaluating the CAISO balancing area's wheel and export prioritization market design has been and continues to be, 1, assessing the extent to which the resulting policy is transparent for all market participants, and 2, assessing the extent to which the CAISO balancing area's tariff authority is equivalent to the tariff authority that other balancing areas in the West have to prioritize native load relative to wheels or exports. As just about everyone involved with this initiative can attest, assessing the equivalence between the CAISO balancing areas policy and other Western balancing areas policies is challenging given the very different market structures. And you've got CAISO's hourly, mathematically optimized central clearing market structure on the one hand, and the rest of the West bilateral structure on the other. Assessing the equivalence of the prioritization policies is also very difficult because the CAISO does not have, and within the next year or two, it realistically cannot have a design for upgrading the CAISO transmission system to support the wheels that the neighboring balancing areas would rely on in their resource planning. The interim policy that the ISO proposes to extend to 2024, it's not ideal for the CAISO balancing area, and it's not ideal for neighboring balancing areas, but we support extending it over reverting to the arguably ambiguous wheeling policy that was in place prior to August 2021. The interim policy provides some important clarity for the next 2 years, and while it doesn't go as far as other balancing areas in terms of considering how much excess transmission might exist to allocate to high priority wheels, the interim policy does create some limitations on the amount of wheels that can have the same priority as native CAISO load. So along with just about every other stakeholder, we urge the ISO to get the long-term wheeling solution designed and implemented as soon as possible. Moving on to the high priority export policy. So the ISO is clarifying in its tariff an issue with forecasts for variable energy resources that are outdated at the time the real-time market closes. We support the ISO clarifying that If those outdated forecasts are erroneously high, they cannot be used to support high priority exports. We also appreciate the technological enhancements that the ISO is making to its systems to increase transparency around high priority exports. We have noted some further enhancements to its high priority export policy. We recommend the ISO continue to work on going forward, but we support the proposals that the ISO described today as incremental improvements. So in conclusion, while we think there are further enhancements that the ISO could keep working on, DMM supports the Phase 1 proposal that management is bringing to you. Thank you again for your time, and I'd be happy to try to answer any questions you may have.
Thank you, Ryan. Any questions for Ryan from the governing body?
I don't have a question so much as I have just a perspective. So Ryan, thank you for that, for sharing your perspective with us. I thought it was a very balanced, looking both inside, outside of the Cal ISO, and so I appreciate that acknowledgement of the impact, across the areas to the EIM entities as well as to the Cal ISO balancing authority. So well done. Thank you for that report out.
Thank you, Chair Decker. Any other comments or questions from the governing body? Any questions from the board? Excellent. Thank you. At this point, I'd like to open it for public comment. If there are any public comments relevant to this, the management presentation or the DMM presentation or otherwise on this initiative, operator, can you open up the line for that, please?
Sure. To make a comment, please press #2 if you have dialed in via your phone, or use the raise hand icon located at the middle section of your Zoom. At this time, we have no one in the queue.
Thank you, operator. Well, the next step, which is a little bit new because we're doing this in a joint meeting, is for the governing body to determine. We did get some comments from you, Chair Decker, for the DMM presentation, but let me turn it to the governing body and to you, Chair Decker, if there's any discussion that you would like to have on the advisory role and exercising that role, and then we can move to a motion.
I see that member Prescott has unmuted, so John.
Okay, thanks for the presentation. Just a couple of quick comments here. I would support advising the Board of Governors to approve this Phase 1 proposal. It makes sense right now. It's a good compromise, and as Greg pointed out, it does give participants time to work on a long-term solution. And I really want to emphasize how important that solution is. It's important in terms of looking at future market expansion, and it's important that it treats native load for all customers across the region fairly and equitably and comports with the FERC rules. And that's a tall order, and I appreciate the fact that there wasn't time to put a longer-term durable solution in place now. This is a good stopgap, not perfect, but boy, we really need to roll up our sleeves on Phase 2 and do what we can to get it to the finish line to make sure that it is a good long-term durable solution. Thanks.
Thank you, John. Member Conziolica.
Thank you, Anita. So I first of all want to make a comment. I guess I missed my opportunity to ask questions of Greg. I just missed the portion of that.
You can ask questions of Greg now. You did not miss any opportunities.
Okay, thank you, Roger. So, Greg, hopefully you're still on and listening here. So one thing that came through loud and clear to me from all the commenters, and it's really kind of supportive of what John was just covering, was the importance of schedule and how important it is to move through this and meet those schedules. And that was a really common theme. And I thought it was interesting that the California load-serving entities had a proposal, I guess, so to speak, of looking at even trying to accelerate this a quarter or so with the potential of maybe getting some things moved forward a bit. And my perception when going through the proposal is you have a pretty tight, aggressive schedule now, and it was trying to incorporate enough time so that everybody can respond accordingly and also plan accordingly, so that as you work through this year, 2022, to develop the proposal and then having a year to implement, and then that gives that time frame for getting prepared for summer 2024 with new rules. Could you just comment on the potential of this accelerating even in part a little bit?
Yeah, so, when we look at the schedule, as I mentioned, there is a large amount of policy development that needs to be accomplished through phase two. We're looking at several aspects, setting up a new transmission reservation process, perhaps changes to our transmission planning process. So there's new processes we're going to have to stand up then on the implementation side, as well as changes to our systems, establishing a rate structure for this new reservation process. So there's quite a bit of work that needs to be done. That being said, we always have, if there's certain enhancements that are identified that might be able to be implemented earlier, I would say there's a possibility of that, but, I really caution against that for a couple of reasons. We did, going through this phase one process, consider, some enhancements to the interim approach that really turned out to be somewhat problematic without the full comprehensive solution. And, the other thing that we're really trying to provide here to the market is some certainty, so that we can help support those contracting efforts. So, I think the schedule we're putting out, we're trying to put this out, the firm schedule that, our goal would be to, implement that new functionality. We usually put in new functionality in the fall of each year. And so we would be looking to put this new functionality in, best case in the fall of next year, which would be, plenty of time in front of summer 2024. And we think by doing it that way, that's also providing that certainty to the market that they'll know that those market rules should be stable for the next 2 summers to help facilitate that contracting, and then that they will also have enough lead time again for their contracting for summer 2024 when that new paradigm would go in place. So we think there's a lot of benefits to that, and are a bit hesitant to trying to put in more interim type measures in the meantime. We think that getting to that comprehensive solution is really the best place to be at the end of the day.
Okay, thank you. I appreciate that clarification.
This is Mark Ruffett. I'd just like to add that we do understand the urgency of this issue, but we also, as Greg stated, we need to do it in a thoughtful and organized manner to make sure that the staging of it and the sequencing of it with contracting and implementation exists. But we do understand, and that's why we want to focus our efforts on the phase 2 immediately.
Thank you, Mark. Agreed. I was going to go into that. It was clear that of all the work going on, this rises to the level of the highest level of priorities, and certainly all parties want to see this completed. I know there's still frustration as to being in this interim mode, but looking past that portion of the frustration, we certainly need to see this finalized, and I think the certainty, Mark, that you just touched on is really important, so that for this summer and the next summer, everyone knows what they're dealing with, and then changes would occur as planned, and then resources can be allocated to do that. I do think the proposal finds a very good balance. I thought there were a lot of good issues raised, and it does appear that a lot of the input was taken and adjustments made to address that input. And this is probably as critical as all the other things. This is right there along with resource efficiency and being able to know what we're going to have. So I'm going to be in a position to support advising the Board of Governors to approve as requested. Thank you.
Thank you, Bill. And I see that Member Gardner has her hand raised.
Yes, thank you, Chair Decker. So I just wanted to make a brief comment. I guess I should start off by saying that I also support exercising our advisory opinion on this matter, and also support, similar to Rob and John, supporting this measure as it currently exists. I think, what we've heard from a lot of stakeholders is that, yes, this is not the ideal long-term solution, but nobody really envisioned this to be the long-term solution from the get-go. And it seems like, given some of the concerns with energy contracting, particularly from our Desert Southwest stakeholders, that keeping the current paradigm in place until we can develop that long-term solution by 2024 really is the best way to move forward at this time. The comment that I had was related to why this particular decisional item is under joint authority, and I'm going to offer my opinion, and Roger can certainly weigh in as well. But I heard a comment made earlier that this doesn't impact EIM entities, and so therefore this is an advisory decision. And I just want to clarify that, because I think it's a really important clarification. When we look at what is under joint authority, we're looking at the does it apply test. And so in this case, this rule, the way that it's being designed, it does not apply directly to the EIM entities. It in fact applies to the CAISO BAA. But it absolutely impacts EIM entities, and we've heard that loud and clear from stakeholders, not only EIM entities, but other stakeholders as well. So I just want to make that clear. This certainly impacts a lot of important stakeholders throughout the region, but because the rule itself doesn't apply to EIM entities, the EIM governing body will be offering its advisory opinion only. So I just wanted to underscore that, and I don't know, Roger, if you want to add anything or not.
No, I don't actually have anything to add to that. I'm not sure if there's anything from anyone else on the management team that wants to comment. But I think you expressed it well.
Thank you. And so, Anita, if there are no other comments, I'm finished at this point. So thank you for the time.
Okay, and Member Pong.
Thank you very much. Piling on, I agree with everything that's been said by John, Rob, and Jennifer. So a couple of things, and this is to take back a scold that I gave to CAISO. When we first went ahead and agreed with the interim solution that was put in place for the summer, I know I was really concerned that something would be brought to us in a complete rush for the next summer, and that we would have no option but to approve it. So I really, really appreciate this very thoughtful approach. And yet still interim that has been taken by CAISO and clearly with the input from stakeholders. So once again, I'd like to thank CAISO for proving that it is willing to listen and it is willing to incorporate stakeholder feedback. And then secondly, with regard to the thing that Jennifer just raised, which has to do with the decisional classification for this initiative, I know in the past when something didn't meet the clear criteria established for determining the way that the decision will be made on an item, there have been rules that have been bent, kind of like the filibuster thing in Congress. But anyway, there have been exceptions that have been accepted. And in this case, this might be one of those where this should be perhaps a joint authority issue. Anita, I think you might be addressing this a bit more. I hope you do. And that concludes my comments.
Okay, so two things. One is, after the vote is over by the Board of Governors, I do have a comment, so Roger, if you would make sure there's a little space for that. But in this case, for this phase one, in reading through the comments and hearing from various stakeholders, it's abundantly clear that the underlying interest is to move something forward that actually supports a West-wide effort. And I think this is a step in doing that. It acknowledges the benefits to consumers inside and outside of California. And I think it also, at the end of the day, acknowledges California just can't go it alone. So for this first phase, I've been skeptical, I'd say, but I am going to support this first phase as we move forward. So Roger, back to you.
Thank you, Chair Decker. So I appreciate everyone's flexibility. I've learned a couple of things as the discussion has continued. One is we had a public commenter that was trying to get into the line but had some technical difficulties. And so I'd like to give that another shot. And that was Scott Ransel from PG&E. So operator, could you, before we move to any type of motion here, could you circle back on the public comment and see if we can get Scott Ransel from PG&E's ability to connect and make his comments?
Sure. Scott, if you have dialed in via your phone, please press #2. If you have joined in via the Zoom app, use the raise hand icon located at the bottom. All right, Scott, I'm going to unmute your line now. Please go ahead.
Hi, this is Scott Renzel of Pacific Gas and Electric. Just want to confirm you can hear me.
We can.
Great. I just wanted to comment, echo, and share some of the sentiment that has been voiced today. Obviously, this issue, I think as many have stated, it is not the ideal solution for everybody, but it allows us to focus on the long-term solution, which in PG&E's case we have been actively trying to pursue for a while with all the stakeholders in the ISO. So we're happy to see that the ISO has established a process here with phase one that allows people to focus on that longer-term solution. And to the comments around, overall impact, it very clearly has an impact on the CAISO, and it does not go unrecognized that it has an impact on the entire Western United States, or certainly folks close to the CAISO. So working through that solution collaboratively and collectively, I think, is going to be an important way to make sure we maintain that timeline and deliver on a transparent, clear, and well-designed result for everybody. With that, I'm happy to take any questions if you have, but I just wanted to share those comments.
Any questions from the
board and the ISO?
Any questions from the board or the governing body for Scott? Thank you, Scott. We appreciate it. Oh, I'm sorry.
Well, this is Chair Decker. I would make a comment to Scott. I appreciate the Pacific Gas and Electric's open view to the changes that need to be made in support of a West-wide market. And I really want to say that I appreciate the leadership of Portland or Pacific Gas and Electric in doing so. So, Scott, thank you.
Thank you, Chair Decker. Thank you, Scott. And just to make sure, operator, can you see if there's any other public comment? I think we went a little bit fast last time, and so if we can just check the line for any other public comment, then we can move on.
Sure. Once again, if you have dialed in via your phone, please press #2. If you have joined via the Zoom app, please use the raise hand icon.
Okay, do we have anything, operator?
At this time, we have no one in the queue.
Great, thank you. And again, thank you, everyone, for your patience and flexibility. At this point, I think we can, I can read the motion for the governing body and move that the EIM governing body advises the ISO Board of Governors, as discussed in today's January 20, 2022 joint general session meeting, that the governing body supports management's transmission services and market scheduling priorities proposal. Can I have a motion, please?
So moved. John.
Second, and Severin.
This is just for the governing body. And so, in a second for the governing body.
And Roger, this is Rob. I will second that.
Thank you, Rob. Chair Decker, your vote, please.
Aye.
Member Fong?
Aye.
Member Gardner?
Aye.
Vice Chair Konzioka?
Aye.
And Member Prescott?
Aye.
Thank you, governing body, and that motion to support and provide, exercise your advisory role and support is approved. And so at this point, let me give the Board of Governors, before we move on to a vote on the motion, an opportunity to express any comments or questions that they may have, whether for Greg or otherwise, regarding the measure. Chair Bhagwat, would you like to comment or suggest from the rest of the board?
Happy to do so. I'm going to start off just by a couple of thoughts. One is, we all recognize this is a compromise. We all know that this is not a long-term ideal solution. And I really appreciate the fact that people are willing to be cooperative about this, and that we've done this in a very, very sort of in a spirit of cooperation, in the spirit of working together. I also want to emphasize something, which is something that Member Gardner said, which I want to. We are all interdependent on each other in the West. We should recognize that. California and the rest of the West, we're in this together, and I actually think how this has proceeded is a very good sign moving forward in our willingness to recognize our interdependence. So thank you to everyone. And with that, I see Jan's hand is up, so please.
Yes, thanks. I just wanted to quickly comment that I think I appreciate the fact that the stakeholders and the staff have come in with a proposal that takes us until June 1st, 24, because I do think it's pretty important when we look at the resource issues that we're confronting that we need to let people go ahead and make plans and get resources lined up for next summer. The question that I had, which is I'm not sure with the June 1st date, when would the negotiations need to end and a proposal be brought to both boards in order to make that date work? I don't know if that's for you, Roger, or for Greg, or for Anna. Does it mean basically spring of 24? Is that our goal, to try and get to a long-term fix?
This is Anna.
Go ahead, Anna.
Thanks, Roger. I'd be happy to address that. Yes, so in terms of the runway to implementation, and that's really the key to this, and when we can get certainty. Our goal is to provide enough time ahead of time to both implement from a systems perspective, and the contracting needs to be done. So at this point, what we're looking at is making sure that we get a robust proposal that's complete by the end of this year, and that we can take it to you by the end of this year if that is feasible, or early next year, so that we can then get it approved by FERC in time to give everybody certainty for their implementation by the end of 2023, so that they can go into full force in 2024. So that's sort of the runway we're looking at. I do want to emphasize that although that is a very, it's an intensive process, we have done a lot of work over the past few months with stakeholders, and received a lot of input in the many of the working groups that we've been conducting that will help us achieve that schedule. So we're confident that we should be able to achieve that and provide the adequate timing for contracting and implementation.
Well, that's encouraging. It sounds like a very aggressive schedule. I suspect the fire is burning under everybody to work this through and move it forward. I just want to emphasize that I think everyone, and probably on both boards, are very eager to get a long-term fix in place. And but I do also want to thank you that you didn't come back with just a one-year extension, because I was afraid what you just described was what we were dealing with. So I think realistically this is a very aggressive schedule. And I just wanted to endorse, I think John Prescott is the one who made the comments about trying to come to a fair proposal for everybody, which is tough when we're balancing all of these important issues. But keep up the good work, and we'll look forward to your recommendations on this. Thanks.
Thank you.
Thank you, Governor Shorty. I see Governor Bornstein has his hand up. You're on mute, Severin.
I apologize for earlier. I'm still getting used to this process, too.
Me too, and I appreciate your enthusiasm, though.
Yeah, and I did want to actually express enthusiasm and real support for the process here. This is an extremely difficult position for the CAISO staff, trying to navigate a lot of conflicting desires here with a limited resource, obviously. I think we've come to the best outcome we can, and I am wholeheartedly in support of it. It's going to be tough negotiations going forward from here, and I just hope that everyone will recognize that and will recognize that there isn't going to be a solution that everybody feels they get everything they want because there just isn't enough resource for that. So I want to say thank you to the staff and say thank you to all the participants in advance for being understanding of the constraints we're working under.
Angelina.
Thank you so much, Chair Bhagwat. And I wanted to also pile on and thank the staff, Mark Leader and Anna McKenna, for the hard work, and also all the stakeholders and all the participants that have participated so far. This is not an ideal solution, but it's kind of a situation of the perfect is the enemy of the good. We're in a stopgap situation, and until we get to a long-term durable solution that is long-term and equitable to all market participants, it's going to take some time. And the 2 years, as Jan Shori pointed out, is actually a very compressed timeline and a pathway to get to where we need with all the steps and approvals that need to take place, and also allow enough visibility and transparency for contracting to be accommodated as well. This will put us on a pathway to successfully complete the process and reach that long-term solution that will make everybody equally happy and equally unhappy. And nobody is going to get everything that they want, but we should move forward with determination. And I'm confident that with the ISO stakeholder process and the inclusivity that we generally see around these processes, we're going to reach a solution that works. So thank you for all the hard work, and thank you in advance for all the hard work that's going to need to take place for us to reach our goals.
Anyone else?
And Roger.
Yes, Mary, go ahead.
I was just going to take the final say here on the board that everything that has been said is correct, but I just want to thank the staff again because I think they've done an excellent job of threading the needle, and I want to thank the EIM board for their confidence in supporting us as well. Thanks.
Thank you, governors. If there's no more questions or comments, I think we are ready for a motion.
Angelina, your hand is still up. Do you have anything more? Okay.
Sorry about that.
That's fine.
Yeah.
We're ready to.
Great. Thank you, Chair Bhagwat. Move that the ISO, and this is a board-only motion, move that the ISO Board of Governors approves extending the currently effective interim wheeling through schedule tariff provisions and to make other tariff changes as described in the memorandum dated January 14, 2022, and move that the ISO Board of Governors authorizes management to make all necessary and appropriate filings with the Federal Energy Regulatory Commission to implement the proposal described in the memorandum, including any filings that implement the overarching initiative policy but contain discrete revisions to incorporate Commission guidance in any initial ruling on the proposed tariff amendment. Do we have a motion, please?
So moved.
I'll move. A second. Either way.
I'm sorry, who was that? Who was the second on that?
Jan.
Thank you, Jen. In your vote, Governor Bhagwat?
Aye.
Governor Bornstein?
Aye.
Governor Galitova?
Aye.
Governor Leslie?
Aye.
Governor Shori?
Aye.
Thank you, governors. The motion passes. And Chair Decker, you had mentioned that you would like to make a comment after the vote.
I do. Thank you, Roger, and thank you for indulging me both boards. So this was the first phase that was defined with the governing body providing advisory input to the Board of Governors in a joint meeting. So this was the first run for us in some of the joint authority where we're actually making some decisions. And I think it marks a real change in the governance of all this working together at the same table. I do want to make note of the various commenters who suggested this should have been a joint authority decision today. And while I think we're all pleased at where we've ended up, I would ask that the Board of Governors give consideration to this being a joint decision as we get to phase 2. That concludes my comments.
I'll just very quickly respond. We are, of course, open to that. I think we need to see the final proposal, and we'll apply our rules, but certainly absolutely nothing is decided about how the second phase will be classified.
Excellent. Well, thank you, governors. Thank you, members of the governing body. At this point, let me ask if there's any comments for future agenda items, which is the last item on our agenda today. Hearing and seeing none, I think we can adjourn the meeting. Thank you very much.